Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Christy Gordon, and today I'm here to talk with Alicia Brown about how she found her artistic voice as well as her recent exhibition at Winston Wachter in New York City. And Alicia is a Jamaican-born artist living in Florida, and her work has won numerous awards, including two Elizabeth Greenshields Foundation grants, has appeared in magazines like American Art Collector and The Artist's Magazine, and she's currently represented by Winston Wachter in New York City and M Contemporary in Detroit. Well, welcome, Alicia. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you for inviting me. It's exciting to talk with you.
It is. It's so good to talk to you. I haven't really talked to you, I don't think, since we were at the New York Academy of Art together years and years ago.
Right? Yeah, which is crazy. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about that earlier. I was thinking, I haven't spoken to you, but there's just something about your personality that I have always gravitated to that made me feel, even if we didn't speak for a long time, but I always know you're there and
Aw,
on
yeah.
Instagram and yes.
I totally feel the same. And it's been amazing to watch your art career take off. Like, I always loved your work at the New York Academy of Art. But what's really interesting to me is I can see that some of the sort of themes and motifs that you were exploring back then have really crystallized in your work. And like, I feel like you've really refined your voice and refined the way you're expressing it. And you recently had this show at Winston Wachter with Tony Sherman. Yeah, everything's just like taking off for you. So I kind of wanted to start by just asking a bit about how that process has gone for you, how it feels like it's gone. Like, I know from the outside world, I can tell you're exploring similar sort of themes, but somehow it feels like it's really crystallized. Is that how it feels for you? How has it been for
Mhm.
you?
You know what? It's good. One of the reasons I even decided to do this with you is because I realized that you've really taken the time to look at what I'm doing, and you've been seeing what it is that I try to express in the work. So that's very good. And yeah, I must say as well, and agree with you that while I was at the academy, like when you're at the academy, you're still trying to play. There's so much that I was absorbing and not having. I always had a voice, but I didn't have the right technical skill, if you may, or the tools necessary to share the stories that I wanted to share and that have always interested me. So I feel like no, like the more, and it doesn't come overnight either, it just doesn't happen like that. It's been constant working and constant growth for me and, testing my limits and just pushing as hard as I can. And I feel like now I'm at a place where my hand is more confident because, I know or at least if I have an idea of what it is that I want to express. And I'm using paint as a language to do that. And, just all that I've acquired over the years, learning from other artists like you, because you don't know this, but even when I was at the academy, I had high regard for you because I respected just how skilled you were and not just to be able to just paint something realistically, but it was the kind of energy that you brought to whatever it is that you created. I respected that as an artist. And, now I see where my growth is not just a testament to my own work, but, it's a lot of artists like you, generous with, giving out information. Like if I stumble or yeah, and I do. I have artists who I can reach out to, like my close friends I can reach out to, and I'll say, what do you think about this? And these are people that help me along the way as well.
Aw, that's so sweet to hear. And it is like so cool to have such a good sort of group of artists that we can like lean on. But you've worked so hard
Yes.
too. Like, I'm so curious what your studio practice looks like these days. But I just imagine you're working so hard.
You know what? I do. I work extremely hard because I have to. It's not just to say, oh, I'm an artist in the art world. I work this way because that's how I am at, at my core. I work at everything that I'm doing with a certain form of dedication and respect. So my studio practice, as a matter of fact, this is my first studio ever, official studio. So I'm living in Florida, in Sarasota, Florida, and I've rented a studio space. It's not very big and it's also not very small. It's maybe about 20 feet by say 15 feet. So I have enough wall space and room to wiggle around and work. So I'm currently working on a solo show that I'm going to be having with Winston Walker in September. So this will be like the first room that I've used to create a solo entire body of work. So um, studio time is very important, and my practicing involved. So here it is. I'm not only an artist, I'm a mother, and I'm doing it on my own. I don't like the term single mother, but currently that's just the position. So I'm taking care of my son alone. So now it's summer break, so there's no school. But when he's in school, it's a strict schedule. I drop him off to school in the morning. I go for a run, I go for a walk, I meditate for 15, 20 minutes, whatever I can get that day. And then after that, I'm in the studio working. And I get him from school, take him to the park, wherever. I come back to the studio maybe for 2 hours. So I do explain to him, he's just 4. So I do explain to him, mommy has to come to the studio and work. There are days when he's okay with it, but then there are other times when, he just wants to go out and play. So, yeah, so whatever time I have in my studio, it's crucial. There's no playing, there's no, I'm just here and I'm working. And of course, I have my moments where I'm having conversation with other artists, like very close friends, like my friend Alonza, my friend Audrey Green, and we will have maybe 10, 15 minutes just to catch up and just to feel like I'm outside the world, not just in my own space. But with as I mentioned earlier, what I do, I'm dedicated to it and I love it. And of course, you have moments where you just don't want to paint, and that's fine. Those are the times when I go and I explore with my son, take him to the park, to the beach, wherever. And then I come back in the studio and I'm revived, and I just keep going. And I try my best to answer emails and take care of all the other things that I need to.
Yeah, there is like a lot of other stuff too, like, but it's so cool to hear how just what your studio practice is like, and that there's a lot of like also like, yeah, like you mentioned walks and meditation, going to the little
Oh yeah.
breaks so that you can have this like focus and intent, like kind of
Mhm.
intensity when you're actually like
Mhm.
working. Um, yeah, well, I think I mentioned I'm writing this book about how to find your voice as an artist, and it's going to come out next year. And I've broken like my process of finding my voice was actually really difficult. I didn't even find my voice after the academy. Like it took so long, and I
Yeah.
almost had to like develop like sort of a series of things that I did for myself to kind of find my voice. And so
Mhm.
I've broken it down into this 5-step framework that basically includes like clearing blocks, creating the habit of working for whatever amount of time every day, sometimes even small bursts of time.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and then like painting intuitively. So not to even try and
Mhm.
make a
Mhm.
painting that looked good, but just to get in touch with my
Mhm. Mhm.
intuition and doing like thumbnails to brainstorm ideas and then
Ah,
knowing your
you know,
world.
oh my God, I'm so proud of you, and congratulations on that. And I'm looking forward to reading the book because
Aw,
when I saw the message from you and you mentioned that, I was really touched because I'm saying it's so vital for people to understand how to find themselves. And as artists, is you can be the best draftsman or draftswoman, but if you don't have something that people can connect with, and it's in all musical, it's all in all not musical but art forms, but as an artist, as visual artist, it's extremely difficult. Like it's not easy to just paint something and to have someone connect to it because there's so many great artists out there, you know. So yeah, I'm excited to
Totally.
read the book. Yeah, of
Aw, that's so sweet. And I was wondering
course.
how like you found your voice. Like, was there anything that you did, or is there anything that you're still doing? Like, do you have any kind of automatic process where you, or have you ever where you're kind of working intuitively or doing like automatic drawings, or is there anything or brainstorming thumbnails? Just like what has your sort of or even your earlier process when you were finding your voice? Was there anything like that ever, or did it just come more
Oh yes.
naturally? Was
Oh
there?
no. So I go back and forth with struggling with
Hmm.
because again, everybody has something to say, but then in my head, I overthink a lot. I have a lot that I want. I've always known I've always interested in a lot of things. I'm interested in history. I'm interested in cultures. I'm interested in, you know, plants, animals, the world in general, the natural world, because that's where I'm from. I grew up in the mountains. I was always surrounded by, nature. My parents were farmers, so we lived a very simple life, but it was a more natural. And I mean, historically, as a Jamaican artist, I'm sure you know of the history of colonialism in the Caribbean, where, we were ruled by Britain, we were ruled by Spain, we were ruled by France, just all these. And I mean, as my ancestry is from Africa, so of course, there's always this questioning of yourself, like, it's not a very simple thing to address because there's so many elements that surround it and so many internal and external influences on who you are as individuals. So, but I remember I was an avid reader because I didn't grow up on television. It was more books or just playing around in nature. So naturally for me, being an intuitive thinker, like I'm creating, I'm making dolls from grass and making, my toys from, whatever it is that was around you in nature, a piece of stick, right? Well, you know what? That's part of the intuitive, like tapping into my intuitive nature because now that I have my son, I really tap into him a lot. I observe him a lot. My awareness is heightened and I'm not as stiff or just trying to stick to the rules for everything. So it's my work has become more fluid in a sense, my thought process. I think as an artist, you like your intuition is very important. I think that everything does not have to be spelled out. So um you mentioned this whole idea of preparing sketches. I do that sometimes, but since I've had my son, I don't sketch as much. I just don't have the time. But what I do, I'll do small thumbnails just to get the idea out of my head. But there's ongoing research with my process. So I love history. I love cultures. I love, cultural studies. I love not just learning about my culture in the Caribbean because it's not even my culture. It's a combination of cultures and experiences and things that are shared by people who are still here, people who are gone. But I've always been interested in just the lives of people. Why do people move from one place to another, things like that. Um, and I've always loved paintings that depict, what someone else is doing, and I've always been attracted to those uh, let's say European paintings because that was the information we would get from books. So of course, like the style that I'm influenced by is, this whole idea of representing the kings and the queens, the aristocratic, family and just their lifestyle. And it's funny because I can't tell you what it is really that draws me to it. But even when I'm watching movies, those are the types of movies I watch. Movies that are set in like this. 16th, 17th century Victorian spaces. And, so I do have a wide background of things that interest me, but it's the thing that make a human survive that knocks you off your feet, that makes you even question yourself and your strength. Because even when I'm thinking about my culture and the background of, the Africans were brought to the Caribbean as slaves, and in my head, I'm always thinking about how did they survive, and not just from the stories that I've been, that or the whatever documentation we can find about, what they've endured. But for me, I'm thinking more in my, like I'm putting myself in their shoe in a sense to get an idea of how, how does somebody survive those kind of harsh situations? And I mean, just thinking about where we are now in the world, and just I'm not a political artist, but of course, this is gonna be it's a part of it. It becomes a part of it because once you're talking about someone else taking over empires, taking over another space, or empires, like an empire being a place you want to go to and you want to explore and become something else or something new or something big. But I've always been interested in just this idea of the power that one man can possess, and then the lack of power that another group. So I like this whole concept of, you know, merging different cultures, subcultures merge with other cultures that you wouldn't necessarily like a higher, because hierarchy is just, it's funny to me. But even in the animal kingdom, it is present, and in nature, it is also present. So I've just been for years of exploring this whole concept of using the technique of mimicry to adapt to spaces. And it's, like just observing an insect. These are things that I did as a kid, and now I'm trying to explore again because it's vital for me and, also for my son as he gets older to know how to adapt to a space, because the space that you're born in doesn't necessarily mean that's the space you're going to live forever. So it's a matter of survival, it's a matter of adapting. And, I try to tap into whatever technical painting skills that I have that I can use to express that. And as a matter of fact, when I decided to go to attend the academy, it was because I needed the right skills to be able to represent people in a realistic manner. Because I was doing it, but I lacked certain information, the understanding of anatomy, and all the other things that come with it. It's easy to just copy something from a book, but to be able to, as Leonardo da Vinci says in one of his, I think he was doing an interview or essay or something, and he mentioned that if when an artist paints someone, that's the easy part, but to be able to give that thing, that join the person life, to give it life, and to have the person who is viewing it feel that, then then they have done it. And I think that's something I aim for all the time when I'm making a painting of someone. And it's one of the most difficult things to do, but that's what I love, and it keeps me searching and exploring and growing.
Oh, and you've really succeeded too. They really have that element. And I love hearing about how,
Good
yeah,
to
you're
hear.
drawing like, interest from your like background and even looking back at like things you were interested in as a kid, like that like all comes in. Because yeah, you've kind of got these like reoccurring motifs, like, and you have for a number of years, like ever since I even really knew you, like things around someone's neck. Yeah, this kind of
Yes, yes.
aristocracy thing, the insects, the plants. And now, I don't know, is this recent, but you've got this kind of line that looks a bit like a cutout, like which is
You
so
know what?
interesting.
It's so I'm someone who is not very versed with technology, right? So I remember like just learning about taking one image from one, like here you have a picture and you want to crop, or not crop, but you want a certain image from that picture and then to add it to another space, or to create another picture. So it's this tool. Is it the lasso tool,
Yep.
or
Yep.
I
In
think it might have
Photoshop.
been. So I was just fascinated by that tool and just the power that it would give me. So now I can cut something out in a certain way and then just stick it somewhere else. So years ago, my first solo show I had in Jamaica in 2016, I think it was. And the title of that show was Copy and Play. And it was, centered around exploring this whole idea of belonging again, where you're taken from one space, whether you're forced from that space or you voluntarily move from one space to another. So it's a matter of that kind of shift from one to the next. So there's always this tension between, the world that you're from and the other space that you have to inhabit. So I was thinking about that in the latter years at the academy, and I started to apply that in maybe one or two paintings. But it was also like playing around with this idea of stitching. So you're basically stitching something or someone together to create whoever you wanted that person to be. Or in turn, you are taking something and making it whatever. So it's not one thing or the other. And when we think of identity is along that line where you're consuming these different elements from different spaces, different people, even as families. Every family is different in the values they have. But then once you step out of your family and go to college, then there's a big shift.
Yeah.
So but I've started using the lines again. In a way, I'm using it for multiple reasons. I want to create a kind of tension within the space itself. So you have these very the graphic lines along with these organic forms of the figures, or aspects of nature. But it's also about transition, and it's not just a physical transition, it's more of a psychological transition. So I do like the idea of adding elements, and that's intuitive because the idea came to me and I just started applying it, and I like working like that. So even if I start out with I have ideas I'll start out with, and then during the process of painting, I never just stick to what it is that I initially started out with, because once you start to paint, the painting becomes itself. It's not, you don't have control anymore. So I love that part of the painting because that's when, you know, my child becomes, more explorative, and not explore more explore I'll explore more. Exploration becomes more free, and I feel more like a child, where a child does not have all the information needed or we think they need to navigate the world, but intuitively, everybody is born with the things to survive with. As a kid, as a baby can survive without a mother. And those are things that I think about while I'm painting. It's not just to paint a picture, a pretty picture of my family. That's not, it's beyond that.
Yeah, that's so true what you said too about how the painting almost starts to give you ideas. It starts to have a life of its own. It's like
Yes.
it's fascinating how that works. Yeah. And this year like it looks like to my eye as if this time that now your voice has really become like crystallized and refined. It sort of looks like at the same time as that's happened, your art career has just like taken off. And I can't tell, like, looking at your CV, like what the moments were that started to make this happen. I mean, your work is like so amazing that that's what started to make it happen. But I'm just like wondering how it's felt for you and what like some of the sort of stepping stones along the way were that have sort of led to where you are now.
I'm always the last person to notice what's really happening for me, to be honest. So I have very good friends who they'll reach out to me and they're like, Alicia, did you see this? Like, as I say, I'm always the last person. But I have certain goals that I set for not necessarily for the year, but I do have goals that I set down
Mm.
that I want to achieve as an artist. And for my career, and just as an individual, sometimes they're not our goals, but they are goals that say, you know what, in whatever period, then I need to have like not be afraid to do interviews. I was really very nervous in the beginning. Like if I should look back at my earlier interviews, I had a problem with my nerves, and I read this book, which is very good book. Oh, shoot, I can't remember the name of the author, but the book is called Clarity.
Ooh.
It's a easy read, and I think the author's last name is Smart. I can't remember, but I know I read the book. I know the name of the book is Clarity,
I'll find
and
it
I
and put a
read the
link in the
book.
description.
Yes, I will search too, and if I find it, I'll definitely send it to you. But um, after graduate school, I returned to Jamaica, and then when I returned, I had my solo show. And then after that, I was getting more shows that I was participating in. Now, this is one thing I want people to notice that nobody's just going to invite you to a show like that. You have to apply. So everything that I've done it for myself. It's not that somebody say, "Oh, hey, you want to do this?" No, it's because of the work that I put in. So after my solo show, I had invitation to participate in a show at the National Gallery in Jamaica. And I think that, yeah, that was 2017. And in 2017, that show was, I think that was the biennial. Yes, it was the Kingston biennial. And during that process, or for the biennial, at the end they would nominate artists for different awards. So I was awarded a Don Scott Memorial Award along with two other artists. So normally that award was given to one individual, but that year it was given to three artists because just of the caliber of the work, how good the work was. So I was one of the artists. And after that, 2017, I was still in Jamaica trying to figure things out. I was teaching, but I was not satisfied because it wasn't what I wanted to do and it wasn't in the place that I should be. But things, take time. So I mean, I've always known I wanted to pursue an art career, but at this time in my life, when I returned home, I realized that, my teaching, it was not fulfilling. So I made a decision at that time that I know it was going to be a big sacrifice, and I made note of all the things that I'm going to lose. And I'm like, okay, well, it's going to be worth it. So I decided to resign from my teaching job, and then I just went on this, you know, journey of getting myself situated in the space where I thought, I would fit in to be able to pursue this art career. And that's what I've been doing all this time. And just making work. I was making work. They weren't selling. right? But I was still making the work because that's what I had to do. And then in 2018, I had my son. I was still making work, and I had an invitation from this gallery called Virego Gallery in Seattle. And this is I did show in a I did make work for a group show at that gallery before. It's a small gallery, but the owner, the director at the time, she admired my work, and she invited me for a solo show. And of course I did the solo show, and then the work started, the work was growing. It started to get more, more awareness and draw more attention. And then after that, COVID hit. So, I'm at home with my son, first time being a mother, trying to figure out my life. And I just kept painting. The good thing about it is that where I was, I mean, to compare to others, I was free to move around. I could go to the park with my son. There's nobody there. We could go hiking. So I was outside a lot in nature and just working. And because I knew it had to pass, it was terrible, but I knew it had to pass. I got COVID at some point, but you know, it it's again one of those things that happen in life that shows the strength of humans and our survival skills. So, as a creator, it didn't it didn't put any pause on my button. And I was applying to different for different shows, or I got invited for different shows that were online, and I did them. I had a virtual show for Prism Art Fair in Miami because I'd shown with them before the virus came out. I showed there, and that's where most of my work sold to. And then, again, it's just making the work. If you don't have work, then a curator won't be able to say, "Oh, I could use this or that painting in a show or that artwork in a show." So it's just been constant working, Christy. It's not been any. My journey has not been smooth. It's just struggles. It's sacrificing, living with my family just so I can, get my feet on the ground, painting in my sister's garage when it was really hot in Florida and getting the work done. So as I mentioned earlier, this is my first studio that I have, and it's my heaven, it's my haven. And this is where I come, and this is where I get out everything that I want to share. I've always I'm a vocal person. I like to express myself. I'm not afraid of that. But there are moments where you feel like, oh, nobody really cares what I'm making. I've had moments like that. I've had moments where I'm like, oh, I have all this work in my studio and nobody's buying, but then I have to remind myself I'm not doing it for them. I have to do it for me because this is what I must do. This is what, as a child was the only thing that gave me a kind of gratification, and it still does. This I'm an artist at my core. I love to do other things. I love to cook. I love to, do a lot, dance, whatever. But this is what I think I was made to do. And just as I said, I just applied to everything. I applied to grants. I applied to whatever it is that was out there, and I got so many rejection letters, and I just kept going and going and going. And there was also another. So right now I'm working with two galleries. I'm working with Winston Walker Gallery in New York, and I'm also working with M Contemporary Gallery in Detroit. And I was working with M Contemporary in Detroit for maybe 2 years before Winston Walker contacted me. So how did I get the gallery representation? Is again through the work that I was making. So the director saw my work on Instagram, and she reached out to me just to express, how much the work was refreshing, and, that she loved the work. And if I would like to have a meeting with her and the owner. And that's pretty much just how it just happened. And so the first time I showed there was, in the group show. And yeah, I got the chance to go there and, just for everybody could meet me in person and just to get a feel of, the gallery. So now I'm in the process of working on my first solo show with the gallery since my representation. And the show is going to open in September. So I've been pretty busy, just working, and yeah.
Oh, I can't
There's
wait to
no
see
clear.
it. And but you just mentioned so many important points there too. Like you kept working even when like you felt like nobody was seeing it and nobody cared or
Mhm,
whatever. And you've like
mhm.
you just apply to everything, even though like all of us, like I'm always getting all sorts of rejection letters, but you just keep applying.
Oh
Like
yes.
it's not a big
Mhm,
deal. And yeah, and then
mhm.
how and Instagram too. Like that's so great. Like it's such a good tool that we have for as artists. I've heard of a few
That's true.
artists that have gotten
Yes.
picked up by big galleries like from
Mhm,
Instagram. I think actually on Instagram I recently saw a quote by Jerry Saltz that was something like the way to like seem as if you've like got instant success in the art world, like overnight art fame or whatever he said, is like through 30 years of hard work. And that's like
exactly.
what you've done like in the past. You've
Mhm.
been working so hard for so long and then I'm like so
Yes.
happy to see it all paying off for you. Like you
Thank you.
totally.
I'm pleased to hear that because, even before I went to graduate school, coming from Jamaica, and not having the resources, and I took, like, if I could do the academy over, I would, because I love to learn. And I learned so much. There's a lot of information, not just from the professors, but even from the artists themselves. Like, I have high regard for the artists that went to the academy, because it's not that easy. It's not an easy path to go through an academy and to want to pursue art career, and to listen to all the noises in your head and everybody else's. But again, if this is something that you want to do, then it doesn't matter how old you are when you get to do it, as long as you do it. And the thing is that I worked for years teaching and just not feeling fulfilled. And of course, I've impacted a lot of other young artists, which I'm happy about. I love doing it. But, in the back of my head, I'm always thinking, no, this is not what Alicia dreamt of as a 10-year-old girl, just lying in the grass and dreaming about just being able to draw forever, you know? And I do believe that whatever it is that somebody um, wants to do at their core, that it should be something that should be encouraged. But everything takes work, and it takes a lot. I must stress the sacrifices that it takes. You have to be willing to sleep on the floor if you have to, you know. And I'm not making money, I'm not rich, I'm not famous. I don't want any of that. But what I love is that I'm able to change the way someone feels or think about themselves just through the art that I make. And I remember the first art work that I saw was by Michelangelo. I was maybe about 9 years old, and I read in magazines. Again, I'm not from a place where there's television or artists. I've never met an artist in my life when I was growing up. That was unheard of. We had farmers, teachers, and preachers,
Me
but
too.
right? So I think when you have something that presses you and makes you feel good and alive, that you're gonna do whatever it takes to be able to feel that all the time, and to be able to use that as your tool, you know. So again, the sacrifices and the dedication and the respect for other people in your field, and not to be angry and upset if somebody else is getting something that you think you should get. And that's where, like when I get all the rejection letters, when I send them out, I'm like, okay, next one, I'm going to just apply to the next one. Because you have to understand that there's so many artists out there trying to do or apply for the same thing you're applying for. And there are certain criteria. So like now I have the privilege of being on the other end. So now I'm a juror for a certain yes. So I've been doing it for maybe 2 years now. And it makes me so much more aware, and not only aware, but having respect for for the artists who are applying and who are out there working. Like there are a lot of artists out there doing work that we don't know of them, but they have to keep going. And then, life gets in the way sometimes. You have families to take care of, and, it's just the reality of things. So I'm very happy that I'm able to do this and take care of my son at the same time. Again, I'm not rich and I don't need riches, you know. So through my work, I can share my happiness, my sadness, my joy, my journey, my soul. And I couldn't ask for anything else.
Aw, it's so true, and I just love that. It's so fulfilling. And oh,
Yeah.
I'm just so happy to get to talk to you today. Where can people see more of your work or learn more about you if they want to check you out?
Well, it's not that I'm lazy, but it just takes so much time sometimes. But I'm mostly on Instagram. That's where I'll post, like my process sometimes or whatever it is that I'm doing. And yeah, it's mostly on Instagram, or if people just want to go to my website, it's www.alicialisabrown.com.
And I'll
And
definitely
it's the
include a
same
link.
name on Instagram. So yeah,
Oh,
you
that's
can check me
perfect.
out there. Yes. And people can always just send me an email if they want to talk, or, have a studio visit, or, yeah, because there's Zoom. So we can do it online.
Aw, that's so sweet.
Mhm.
And I'll definitely include a link to the description to both of those so anyone who wants to check out your
I
website or your
appreciate that.
Instagram.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, well, it's
So,
so good to talk to you.
it was lovely talking to you too, Christy. I mean, I've always admired you, and just it's not just your technical skill, but just your approach to being able to represent people. Like I met you the first time I saw you was in one of those classes I took with Stephen Asal, and he blew my mind. And then you were standing directly in front of me, and I'm like, what the heck? Like, how did she just,
Aw.
as a matter of fact, I was watching you a lot more than I was watching Stephen, because as another student, I'm like, wow, I was really impressed. And I followed you since, and I've admired your work and just your tenacity, and I love your videos. I'm like, wow, I love how much you put into what you do, and you try to share it, and you're just generous also with your information, and whatever whatever you can do to help
Aw.
artists.
Aw,
So
that's so
kudos
sweet.
to you on that too. Yes, you're doing
Aw.
a good job.
Thank you so much. Well, you too. I
You're
just
welcome.
love seeing your work and how it's developed, and I can't wait to see the show in September and see
Yes,
you in person
gonna be
again.
excited. It's gonna be
Yeah,
exciting.
I'll say.
So thank you so much, Kirsty,
Thank
for
you.
inviting me. And
Aw, well, thank you so much. And I can't wait to
thank
see you
you.
soon. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for
Okay,
being
we'll talk.
here. Talk to
You're
you soon.
welcome. You're most welcome. Have a
Bye,
great weekend.
Alicia. Bye.
Bye bye.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Down to Art. Thank you so much for being with us.